Buenas tardes. Bueno, bienvenidos a la primera conferencia plenaria de esta semana. Estamos muy contentos con la participación de todos ustedes y estamos dando inicio a las 53 Jornadas Argentinas de Informática y a la 50ª Conferencia Latinoamericana de Informática. La primera conferencia plenaria está a cargo del profesor Yannis Ioannidis, presidente de ACM. ACM está haciendo un gran esfuerzo por acercarse a Latinoamérica e incorporar miembros y personas que les interese estar aquí. Veo un montón de caras conocidas, así que como estamos muy atrasados, vamos a empezar rápidamente. El tema, lo saben, Open Science, súper importante. No digo más nada porque decir presidente de ACM ya está. Para todos los que hacemos computación es suficiente. No voy a dar más detalles sobre el profesor Ioannidis. So, welcome, Yannis. Your talk.
Gracias. Hola. Estoy muy feliz de estar aquí dando esta charla. Es mi primera visita a Argentina y la primera asistencia de CLEI, y espero que sea la primera de muchas. Gracias. That is my Spanish. And the rest will be in English. I will give you a tour of Open Science. And if at any point you have questions or comments or anything, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. We don't have to leave all the questions for the end. And if some questions arise and I don't show some slides, this is fine. The important thing is our interaction. So, Open Science. As you heard, as I said, it's my first time in Argentina, and I arrived very early in the morning yesterday in Buenos Aires, and then later I took the flight here. And as the taxi was driving, the first thing, I was looking around, and one of the first things I saw was this. And I said, I'm in the right place, okay? So yeah. This is not the only thing I know about Argentina, but it's definitely a symbol. Now, there is there a chance to turn off these lights? It's not critical, but I think it will be better if... I'll continue. So there is this thing. Yeah, I think it's better. Yes. Thank you. Gracias. Called Triangle of Knowledge, where there is research, industrial innovation, education, and the three activities and the three types of organizations that primarily perform this. When they collaborate, there is growth. There is knowledge growth, there is financial growth, there is everything. And that's why we have a research center next to universities, professors being researchers or going off and making companies. This talk, Open Science, although it affects all three, primarily is about research, how we do research and how we publish and how we do this process. So this is my tour. So here is a depiction, my personal artistic, so to speak, depiction of what it is. By the way, before I show this, some will say, why open science? What is wrong with what we are doing so far? Openness changes our ability to solve problems, not just of science, but also of society. And a big example was with the pandemic that hit upon us. And then very quickly around the world, everyone who had data, either the most bloodthirsty commercial publishers, opened up their publications. Many research infrastructures opened up access to the infrastructures for people to do experiments and so on. And this openness was tremendous. It happened without any government asking for it. The community did it, and it had tremendous impact on having vaccines so fast. Nowhere, never else, never in the past did we have such results. So openness paid off. And open science, the initiative and the movement of open science is before the pandemic, but definitely this accelerated it and helped motivate it even more. So here is my depiction of what research life cycle is before talking about openness. So what do we do? Well, here's a researcher, and the researcher has a hypothesis, has an idea, and then decides on the method that she will use, and then the data that she will use, and humans, that if humans are involved in the research, software to use, hardware to use, and so on, and then starts doing things and comes up with some results. And then these results eventually are stored somewhere, and if the research is done, then the results are archived, and then there is a publication, and then there is dissemination of this publication to the world, and then people go and read this publication. And then by reading, then a researcher comes up with a new hypothesis, and this is essentially the research life cycle that we do. I started from the researcher having a hypothesis, but sometimes you start by reading, sometimes you don't have a hypothesis, you just collect data and you see what the data tell you, and so on. Roughly, this is what we do as researchers in producing science. Now, in the typical research life cycle, the way we know it now, everything below the line after the publication is done is forgotten. You forget the data, you forget the software, you lose it. The student who did the work eventually leaves, and then you don't remember what it was. This is lost. And the other thing is that for the cost of producing a publication, you pay to read. So you see where it is. This is the cost. Now, what happens in this research life cycle when we open it and we say we do open science? First of all, nothing is lost. Everything is maintained. Everything is in the open. We have all the information that was produced in that. And we don't pay to read, but we pay to publish. That's open access, which is a part of open science, which I left in the end because it may be the most familiar issue with open science for you. But as I said, all is open, but let's be a little bit careful. There may be some things that are private. For example, in medical science, you may have data of patients. Well, you have to respect the privacy. The results may be closed, maybe because you have industrial data. We are thirsty for industrial data, but they have to be treated with privacy. So it's as open as possible, as closed as necessary in certain cases. And of course, when we say openness, it affects every single step, and it may have some things that we haven't been thinking of in our typical way of operating. For example, openness in the extreme, the fanatics in openness say, well, you have a hypothesis, tell the world. I am going to study this. And not only that, I will do this methodology, and I'll use this data, and all that. So you are naked in front of the world and saying, this is what I'll do. And if you fail, you say, here, I'm naked and I failed. Okay, I didn't have a good idea or a good methodology. So data up front, intermediate results. And why does openness ask for this? Because even a failed study is useful to know so that others don't go and do the same things again and again. Or they can say, I saw you fail, but this was the little thing that is the reason for your failure, and so on. And also open processes. But the other thing is that openness costs. Because you don't throw away things, you have to prepare them. You have to make them reusable. You show them to the world what you did. So it's all your laundry, which you could leave dirty after you were done and published, they cannot be dirty anymore. You have to clean them because the world will be looking. So all these red things, you have to use infrastructures, you have to come up with persistent IDs for your data. You have to link the various data, they are not irrelevant. A lot of work is happening in order to fulfill the principles of open science. And open science is not just an issue that we scientists care about. Even UNESCO, the United Nations, has a big initiative on openness, on open science, and because it promotes collaboration, reproducibility, transparency to society. All public research, it is taxpayers who pay for it. So the society pays for my work. It should be accountable to society that the research that I'm doing is useful to society. So all these great results. And this is a picture from UNESCO, but notice that one of the things is open access. So open science is not the same as open access. Many other things that I showed you what you'll do, and I'll give you a tour, as I said, touching most of the things in this research life cycle. This is what my talk is. And for every stop, I will be doing animations in the pictures that in the style that I showed you until now. But for each one, I can give a whole hour talk and even more about that. But today is just a taste, a flavor of the various parts of open science. But let's go to publications. What does open science is asking for, and where does it lead? Why do we publish? Why is this an issue? Why do we publish? So let's talk about the publications, which involves, archiving the data, publishing, disseminating to the world. By the way, everything that I'll talk about, I am a computer scientist. I specialize in data management, but everything that I'll talk about today has nothing to do with my specialty. It's for all sciences. And in all sciences, these principles of open science or open access and so on are being discussed, experimented with, and so on. So it's general. So the people who study scholarly communication, i.e. publications as their main topic of their own research, they say that we publish for 4 reasons. 1, registration. Hey, I wrote this paper, I'm Yannis, glorify me, it's my work, okay? 2, validation. Well, peer review checks and says, yes, what Yannis did is good. So that's why, second reason why we publish. 3rd, distribution. World, look, I did this and it's good. It showed up in this journal and so on. And finally, 4th, archiving. Archiving for 100 years from now, someone to be able to go back and find the thing and read it. These are the 4 reasons why we publish. And this is the reason, but have in mind, I'll show you why 1 and 4, we can think of them as slightly separate from 2 and 3. So let's look at these 4 things, how they are accomplished in today's world, or I should say in the world of printed publications, the way we've known even until now, but certainly exclusively until recently. So here is an author, she wrote a paper. That's registration. There's the paper. Then sends the paper to somewhere where reviewers are involved, and the reviewers, at some point, they say, yes, this is a good paper, this is validation. I'm not showing the rejected papers, although there are many more than the accepted papers. Okay. And then the revised version, let's say, goes to the world. That's dissemination. distribution, I'm sorry. And then eventually this, you also put it in some archive so that the world has it there, you know, for 100 years. This is the printed publishing model. And when it was printed, all 4 steps had to be done by one organization, be it Elsevier, or be it ACM, or be it CLEI, okay? One organization had to do it when it was printed. Why it had to be one, let's not go into the details, it doesn't matter. But let's go now to electronic publication. Many, many more people now are talking about overlay publishing. What does it mean? Well, you don't write a paper when you send it to reviewers, but you take the paper, still registration, and you send it to an archive. You put it there. So 1 and 4, the pairing I mentioned, is accomplished from the beginning. And then on top of it comes the reviewer, and there is a review, and then the new version is archived and so on. Doing it this way, which more and more it gains in popularity in all sciences, in some sciences more, in some sciences less, but across all sciences, this is what's happening. The things 1 and 4 don't have to be done by the same organization as 2 and 3. 1 and 4 can be done by an archival organization like Archive, and there are many others. And validation and distribution can be done by another organization like ACM. So this split changes tremendously how we operate. And I'll show you not a vision, but not even a prediction, but a scenario that I see after I say a few more things. But you see now, this is overlay publication. What does it mean? You've already put it out there in the archive. And the journal or the conference comes in an overlay of things that are in this pool of things that have been archived. And that's more openness because you put it in the archive as well. Computer science, this is one of the very few things that I'll say that are separating us, computer scientists, from the rest of the sciences, is that we have this weird thing called conference publication. Okay? Conferences are very important for us because the speed of light is the speed that our science is moving on. We cannot afford to wait for a journal and so on. Why do we go to conferences? Okay? The same again, 3 reasons. First, to publish, then to present our publication, and then to interact. I'll separate the 3 again, because in the world of open science, really, these 3 don't have to be done as one thing, oh, I go into a conference, I publish in a conference. Think about it. This is the world. And we're saying in order to publish something, okay, I have to start all the way, go on a plane for 24 hours, okay, in order to publish my work and go somewhere else. Why? In open science, you have something that has been validated and accepted. Everyone can go and read it. Why the publication has to be tied to a conference? There is no reason for it. No other science is doing it. All other sciences are publishing in journals. Conference publication is our own concoction. Okay, I won't say discovery. Okay. Let's go about presentation. Currently, again, in the past, we didn't have any other way. But now, why, in order to present in a room, not this room, I'm talking about the other rooms, okay, to be in a room and present, 3 slides or 103 slides to an audience of typically 10 people, 20 people, and so on. Why did you have to travel 24 hours to do this? When the author who has this paper can just videotape himself or herself and have the slides and deliver it. Currently, that's what I'm doing. I'm talking to you, you're just sitting there listening or sleeping or whatever you're doing. But you could, if I was on the screen and you could see my slides and the video of me, more or less it would be the same thing. Okay, more or less. The only thing is that I wouldn't see your reactions and maybe, you know, crack a joke or bad joke or whatever. Okay, but in principle, the thing where I present my work doesn't have to be in person. The third thing is the only true reason to go to a conference, okay, to interact. The author is there, possibly in a poster or in the hallway, and interacts with people. I mean, the main reason why I'm here is not to deliver this talk, but to hear the questions and answers, and then outside to find me and talk and so on, and eventually to drink good wine and then talk even more, okay? This is the reason why it's worth taking an airplane 24 hours and coming to a place. So these three don't have to be together, they have to be separated. So if I were, and of course, more ideas come through the interaction, okay? Might be giving a lecture, it's not as likely for new ideas to come in, but our interaction is more. So let me give you a scenario that people are thinking about, discussing, some piloting, experimenting with, and I personally, this is Yannis, not ACM president or anything else, just Yannis, I find it that we have to move in this direction. In some version, this is okay. So archive exists, ACM exists. So here is the author, writes a paper, sends it to archive. We have a sea of papers. Then ACM comes in and a journal sets up a bunch of reviewers who review whatever paper seems appropriate for the journal. And then if the things that are accepted are published, are sent, the final versions, and the world knows it. This is one thing. And then, not a publication reviewer, but a presentation reviewer, okay, reviews the paper for a different reason. Publishing is one thing, presenting is another, okay? There are publications that are so boring to present, okay? And there are amazing publications, and there are amazing presentations that is a paper, okay, fine. You read it quickly, you got it. Two different things. So again, the same thing. If you want to be presented, it's worth showing and having it in some digital library of a conference or of an event and so on. Put it on YouTube or your favorite channel and do it. That's separate. And then travel to talk to people. Publication, presentation, interaction. I see this scenario, this path, these steps, as something coming to the future, in the future, maybe not as I describe it, maybe similar, maybe slightly on the left, slightly on the right, but open science leads us in this way, and will be saving on air fuel and impact on the environment, and knowledge will be disseminated much better. Open reviews. Okay, this is maybe even the most controversial of all things in open science. What does this mean? Well, I talked about reviewers of papers that have been placed, opening them up. Well, let's look. This is about this topic, okay? The publication, one of what open science asks for is open processes. This is a few bullets, but let me go to my favorite pictures, okay? Here's the author. By the way, notice all authors are smiling, so it is after their paper has been accepted, okay? So the author wrote a paper, sent it to a reviewer, the reviewer writes a review, sends it back. If it's positive, eventually it's sent to the world. If it's negative, it's sent to the author, and the review goes to the garbage can. It's forgotten. It's meaningless for anyone. Now, for many years, this process was what is called single anonymous. What does this mean? That the reviewer knows the author, knows the paper, of course, knows the review that the reviewer wrote, but it's not symmetric. The author doesn't know the reviewer. Okay? Only the paper that he wrote and the review that she wrote. Okay. What does this had problems? Because the reviewer could be a bad reviewer, whether because he or she's a bad person or because they didn't wake up well that morning and they were upset, or they didn't eat well last night, whatever it is. And therefore, the review is not a good review. It is a garbage review. Okay? And this is unfair. This is bad. And when the good paper eventually paper is accepted, the world, all it knows is the author and the final version of the paper. The rest is gone. Neither who was the reviewer, what was the review, what was the original paper, nothing. Final version. You know, when we say openness, it's exactly the opposite. Lately, we said, no, this is wrong because of this black bad guy. Wrong, the bad guy. And we say double anonymous. Let's make it symmetric. The author doesn't know the reviewer, but also the reviewer doesn't know the author. What does this give us? Well, okay, the reviewer has to be, probably will get better reviews because you don't know who the author is, although there are schemes where people, leak this. Let me not go into that. But they cannot say, this is Yannis, I'll reject the paper because I hate him and so on. Or, this is Karen, I know she's goddess, therefore I'll accept. So you get better reviews. You're not biased by the name of the author. So the paper is, the thing is that what you see is still the final paper, and that's it. But when we go to open evaluation and reviews, it says, still it's closed review. Well, open review says, from single you went to double anonymous. No, go to zero anonymous. Open it up all. Open it all up. So everyone knows everybody. The world knows what the paper was, who the author is, who the reviewer is, what review they wrote. Open. Like when we discuss and someone comes in and looks, he said, she said, and so on. What's the problem now? And of course, the final paper is shown. There's no garbage because everything is in the open. There's no garbage can. Now the reviewer has to be very careful because the review they wrote, even if they ate too much last night and they didn't spend time, the world will see what review they wrote, so they have to be very careful. The review will be good because it will be open. I mean, that's the hope, Now your problem is that the author may be bad. Okay? What? You rejected my paper, you little beep. Okay? Yes. And I said little on purpose because now this is a danger, a senior person's paper being rejected by a junior reviewer. And the junior person's life may depend on the senior person. Okay, down the road, recommendation letters, hiring, and so on and so forth. So the openness that we want, okay, has some issues that we need to compensate for. But so many good things come out of this openness because, okay, we have the review. Now there can be a meta reviewer that will read the review and review the review and say, what did you add there? Because the paper said this. And of course, the discussion can continue and the meta reviewer can review the meta review. And not only that, the author can also comment on the review and say, why are you saying this? And so on. So it is scientific discussion that happens. The way Einstein and Heisenberg were exchanging letters. And yes, they were private, but eventually they were open and people were seeing what they exchanged. This is the scientific discussion. It's like a couple of people are in front of a board and they discuss. This is a community discussion now because the digital technology allows us to do this. This may be too romantic because no matter what you do, people will find ways to do the wrong thing in it, but at least it'll be in the open. It will be easier than to analyze all this data and find the bad guys. And I believe the bad guys will be even fewer because they will be, some of them anyway, will not be as cocky to. Yes?
Yes. So by focusing on evaluation, I was thinking, would standardization of, for example, the review process part openness of the process, or would it be allowed in some way? For example, I think, yes, we have a original reviewer, we have a review, and each reviewer reviews the paper in their own way, and the reviewer considers that they will do their own review, and this change from going with everyone with their own control, how can I say this? Their own control.
Biases?
Not biases,
Okay.
but their own way of going about reviewing something. A lot of things would get lost or would become confusing as trying to follow. So would having some standards help the process, or would it hurt the openness in the other?
It's unclear. Some standardization always helps. For example, these are the elements on which you have to judge the paper: novelty, difficulty, usefulness, and so on. Different criteria when you judge a paper for presentation. It's a different story. So some standardization will help, to be able to compare some things. But over standardizing, I think it will hurt the openness because it is, human brains exchanging information and challenging one another. And I think you have to let this free in order for the best to come out in this discussion. So a little bit, I don't know what percentage. Yes, it helps, but over prescribing how you should do it, then it's not a human process. It's we'll put AI to do it, and then which is another talk. I won't give it now. Thank you for the question, though. So let me say that with such a thing, various conferences and journals are experimenting with, including some parts of conferences of ACM or a journal in ACM and so on. How do you do open review? Okay, so this is with us. And there are various versions. Yes, the reviewer is open, the review is open, but not the reviewer's name, or the reviews are open after the papers are accepted. So many variations, but this is the extreme, okay? Open pre-registration, the thing that I mentioned from the very beginning, open it. So this is about the method and the intermediate results and so on. So full disclosure, new kinds of papers. You need, in order to do this, to have everything connected, old version, new version, and so on. So what is the current process? The researcher has an idea, methodology, data, and what I said, subjects, software, hardware, and then comes up with a result. And then the results are bad. No, I didn't do it right. Throw everything in the garbage, then go back either to the methodology or to the ideas, something, go back, some feedback loop, then do it again. Eventually it's accepted and sent to the world, but all the world, the researcher knows everything, but the world only knows the final paper, okay? Well, the open science research dissemination says, no, it is good to know everything that you did for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. Everything is open. And both the mistakes, also the new ideas that came in, the new methodologies and so on, what didn't work and why did not work. And even there are organizations that allow you to pre-register. The Center for Open Science has a way to pre-register your ideas. And a bunch of people do it in various sciences. So it's not mandatory, okay, but people do it. And there are metrics that say, okay, this affects, these are the benefits of this, and so on and so forth. So we should not forget that even at that level, openness gives you the very. And in the ideal world, in an angelic world, why not? I'll do this, okay? Because even I say, okay, I'm also ready to do the same thing. Let's do it together, for example. So there are many good benefits, but of course dangers of you embarrassing yourself for a stupid idea, whereas before you were holding it. And one more thing, open science evaluation. As I said, it costs to create research in openness. If you remember, there are a whole bunch of things that you have to prepare. You cannot use your little disk. You have to do it openly so that you can reuse them. You have to assign IDs on your data sets. You have to connect your data, your publication, your whole bunch of things. And now a researcher, like many of you, is trying to get publications, is trying to get promotion, it's trying to move on their career. Currently, all we care about is to get the paper out in a good journal or in a good conference. And then who cares about the rest? If openness is an important thing, I have to spend all this time to do all these pink things. So I won't have someone is doing it in a closed science way and has 5 publications, and I'm doing it in openness and I have 2 publications. And then I will lose. I will not be promoted. I will not get the job. So the society, not society, all of society, our community has to come up with ways to evaluate research and researchers in the era of open science. Openness has to count. Creating all these things helps promote science. So how do we do this? And there are no easy answers. At least in Europe, which I'm more familiar with, there are about 500 institutions in an organization called QUARA that is trying to establish criteria for taking care of openness. And one of the directions says, here come the Greek letters, for usually when we say that a delta publication or an epsilon publication, I mean, what the new thing that you said is so tiny and so on, reject. Now we say you want to sneeze and immediately write about it, you know, a delta thing, it was a new sneeze, fine, do it. Put it out. But when it comes for you to be judged, it should be for the 5 strong publications that you wrote. Doesn't matter if you disseminated 100 write-ups that are small or large. Come up with a small number. So this is a direction that openness leads us, and this will help also with what many people call paper diarrhea. So many papers written, and there's no value in many of them in terms of promoting science in any real meaning. Well, openness and coming up with new criteria that what you do is what you do for the hard problems and the ones that someone can take and move forward. Okay, but the AI community is the worst in this direction. NeurIPS, the flagship conference this year, not an ACM conference, flagship conference, 20,000 submissions. Okay, it is meaningless. And now let me come to open access. Okay, as I said, is one thing. Open access is only one part of open science. But open science kind of started from open access. More than 20 years ago, when people started talking about openness, open access was the main thing. Open access is a policy on the cost models of the cost of publications. You don't pay to read, you pay to publish. But open science, as you saw, is a whole new paradigm of how we do research. And open science is one piece of it. Again, I want to emphasize, it's the 3rd time I'm emphasizing it, open science calls for everything being open as possible, but there may be some cases where it's necessary. And openness doesn't mean just papers, it means data sets, it means protocols, it means instruments, it means everything. And when you have a publication, it's not just the text and some graphs that you show, it is the data sets underneath, it is the connections with the specifications of the instruments that you use, the characteristics of the people that you use, and so on. This is the new form of application in the open world. And I mentioned open access, it's about payment. I'll come back to open science, but I wanted to, wrong, I'll come back to open access. But I want to close, not close, also mention that in order to do all this open science, we need open infrastructures. Openness doesn't mean I have my computer, I run it, I have my disk, I throw it away, I don't show you, I don't share with you, and so on. More and more public infrastructures need to be done need to be used in order to do our research in the open. And we need infrastructure to support this entire life cycle. One example of such an infrastructure that I'm very familiar with from Europe, I am coordinating it, is called OpenAIRE. Open Access Infrastructure for Research in Europe. Some of you may be familiar with, most of you may not. But anyway, the key thing is that you take a whole bunch of data sources from institutional repositories, from thematic repositories, all open, or metadata from closed, and there are guidelines that you have to comply with that in order to be open. And then internally, we connect all of this into a huge, very rich, the richest that exists, knowledge graph. There was the Microsoft academic graph, much poorer compared to the OpenAIRE knowledge graph. Now there's OpenAlex, which took over the Microsoft academic graph, still much poorer than this. And we publish and manage all this with various services, and eventually we give services for analytics on top of what has been published, for discovery, monitoring, the funders care about it, and so on. Just so that I show you, 24 funding agencies are participating here. One of them is the European Union. It's one funding agency. And there are many national ones and not-for-profit and so on. Just to say, what is the big number? 130, I missed a million here, 138 million publications. No, not 138 publications, yeah, that would be. 4.5 billion semantic links between data sets, publications, software, and so on. So it is fun to work with this. And there are many data sources where we harvest data from. I won't go over them, but I'll point to one, which is La Referencia. Okay? And OpenAIRE is European, but it has much international outreach, connecting with many organizations around the world. And La Referencia is one of the bigger ones that we are mentioning. And also Remery in Mexico. La Referencia is, many of you may know what La Referencia, how many of you know what La Referencia is? Wow, okay. Okay. La Referencia, La stands for Latin America. Okay. And this is open access in Latin America. La Referencia is institutional repositories around Latin America. Every university, not every, many universities have an institutional repository where the professors and others working in a university have to deposit whatever they publish. Not the version of record, not the final thing, but a preprint necessarily, and other documents. And if you harvest all these things, that's what OpenAIRE does. It goes to more than 2,500 institutional repositories around Europe and a bunch around the world, or aggregators like La Referencia. And this is green open access. So you don't pay, you don't anything. You don't have the version of record. They may not be as connected. OpenAIRE is trying to do that. But La Referencia has been collaborating with OpenAIRE a lot, is using the guidelines that OpenAIRE established before. We have experimented. La Referencia built its own software. It's not the same software as OpenAIRE, but we're very close, and we're compatible in that. And if you notice, we harvest La Referencia for whatever Latin American publications exist. There are 11 countries, 9 national nodes, but 11 countries participating, including Spain. So there are Latin American countries plus Spain. Chile doesn't seem to have a national node, but all the other countries, Argentina, Brazil, well, I won't read all of them, they're down there. From Argentina to Uruguay, so you have a whole bunch of countries. And these are, well, here are the countries. There are national aggregators, and then La Referencia aggregates over them. And this is the green open access way in Latin America. They're great people. I didn't put their names on, that's for speed. But look it up. It is one of the ways. And OpenAIRE that I mentioned has harvested ACM at some point. So you get the metadata. When it will be completely open, you will be harvesting the documents themselves. So this is, to a large extent, the status of open access. To the extent that I know, in Europe, there is mandatory open access for everything that is published, funded by the European Union. And many countries have that. In the US, there is this starting January 1st, 2026. I'm not aware of any policies in Latin America, but maybe they exist. Okay, someone says no, someone says yes. You'll tell me afterwards. Okay. And let me say a few things about ACM Open. I'll skip a couple of the slides. The most open of scientific societies that I know of, and I'm not saying this because I'm the president of ACM, is ACM. It has been facilitating green open access or institutional repositories, and even the digital library connecting to various ways for 15 years already, before any governmental mandate, before the community really uproaring in that. And 3.5 years ago, the ACM Council, 4 years ago, took the following decision. Council adopts the goal of opening the digital library within 5 years from the time. Given that this can be achieved in a way that is sustainable for ACM because there is cost, okay? If we don't have the cost, then ACM will go down the drain and nobody will be happy. And with the understanding that this may take longer due to the impact of COVID-19. Remember, we are 19 June of 2020, COVID is rampant still. And then some things about reporting. And this 5 years from then, it became 1st January 2026. So on January 1st, 2026, assuming that in about a year from now, the Council affirms this decision in the sense that, yes, it is sustainable for ACM, all of the ACM digital library will be completely open to anyone in the world. So this should be looking forward to that. But someone has to pay. As we said, open access says, I don't pay to read, but I pay to publish. So the authors have to seek the burden. And ACM is, again, the only one that I'm aware of, society that has listened to the people that said, the researchers don't want to put their hands in the pocket and cough up money to publish. They were not paying for the most part to read. Their library was subscribing, and then because of their library, they were reading. This is not true for everywhere in the world. This is not true for every institution, but many had this privilege. Someone else was paying. Now I have to take money out of my grant to pay, whereas instead I want to pay a student, or I want to pay to travel to CLEI and be here and listen to talks. How about others paying? The department to pay, the university to pay, the country to pay. So ACM came up with a system that tries to make institutions to join the model called ACM Open, pay a fee, which is according to how much you publish. So if you publish a lot, you pay a lot. But if you publish little, you pay little. So as soon as your university joins ACM Open, then anyone affiliated in this university, any paper that they write, is for free. They don't have to pay for it. And if you have a paper of 40 authors, and one of them belongs to one institution that is part of ACM Open, the paper goes for free. Okay? Remaining 39 ones don't have. These are the fees that the institutions pay. So if you're a high flyer, I don't know, MIT and Oxford and so on, you have to pay $95,000. Okay? And the fewer you publish, it goes down in 8 tiers. And if you are not part, no author is part of any such institution, then you pay what every other publisher is doing per paper you have to pay. And roughly, let me focus on this number, $700. Someone said, well, in order to publish, I have to pay $700? And if I'm going to a conference, I'll pay another $700 to go to a conference. I'm double. This is too expensive. We're looking into all this, but I want to show you that next to the $700 that ACM charges, IEEE charges from $2,000 to $3,000. Science charges $5,000. Nature charges from $11,500 to $13,500. And commercial publishers charge $200 on some unrelated and irrelevant journal to $10,500. So ACM is truly, for the quality that it produces, is very, very cheap. Yes, it's not diamond, it's not, but the services that offers is what makes this cost, and it has to take. The only organization that has published all the costs in a recent January, was it January? It was January article of Communications of the ACM, the flagship magazine. It's all there, all the costs, why it costs $700, and so on. And this is the timeline to full flip. And let me skip this. The first 50 years are already open. So flagship seminal papers are already open. And then the international conference, there's a bunch of content that ACM is not producing but is hosting. LANC, for example, the LANC proceedings are part of that series, the International Conference Proceeding Series. And from January 1st, 2024, so already this year, any conference that starts now will have to be completely open. And we'll see how this will go. ACM is trying to listen to the community. Yes, there are the governmental mandates, so authors have to comply, and we offer them the path. But the model that we've come up with is the model that listens to what the community needs. The numbers may change, we'll see. The important point is to serve the community, okay? And there is, if some people that need to publish, but they are underprivileged or from underprivileged countries, there are special cases that we're dealing with. This is the status currently. The goal is to reach 2,500 institutions to join. Currently, we are at 1,540. So we're 3/5 there. This is where all these institutions are coming from. If we look at Latin America, the numbers are very, very low. 1 or 3 from Colombia, 1 from Argentina, 4 from Mexico. I think there is one very recent from Paraguay. So this is something that we need to look into. What are the reasons for it? And let's see the path that will facilitate Latin American colleagues to publish in ACM. So this is Open Science. I gave you a quick tour of the life cycle as in the philosophy of Open Science. Everything is open except for cases where it has to be closed for reasons other than science. And opening the knowledge pays off. It makes us accountable, it makes us transparent, it makes us to collaborate more, and hopefully brings us to a better world. And the news around the world are not very optimistic, but artists and scientists are the only two communities, in my opinion, that can bring the world together, that can unite the world, that can unite the world. And we are dealing with computer science, and computing affects all other sciences. So if you want, we have an opportunity, or possibly even the responsibility, to try for all of us to come together, and openness is a path to do that. Thank you. Obrigado. Gracias.
Okay, thank you very much, Yannis.
The fourth one is in my language, is Greek. Ευχαριστώ. Okay.
Thank you very much. We are a bit behind schedule, so we are going to allow just 2 or 3 questions so we can begin with the opening of the event. Okay.
I did not mention it in principle, but in my picture, we are also harvesting Cielo. We are collaborating with Cielo a lot. Yeah, it was, I mean, La Referencia came on top of some things that already existed, so yes. Other comments or questions?
Another one?
Yeah. I'll give fast answers so that we can have more questions.
Sorry, my English is so bad. What do you think of the future young reviewers who consumes shorter contents? Can anyone keep the cycle going short quality content?
I'm sorry, I was not able to understand.
So nervous. What do you think of the future young reviewers who consume shorter content?
The future what?
I will read this. What do you think of future young reviewers who consume shorter content? Can anyone keep the cycle going with short quality content? That's the question.
So what do young reviewers write poor quality reviews, and how we can keep the cycle going? I don't, when it is, if everything is in the open, if there is an interesting discussion going, starting from an interesting paper, even if some reviews from young people, or I mean, poor quality reviews are not just written by young people. Usually it is by more senior people who write poor quality reviews. Young people are self-conscious and they make an effort. So if I ignore the young and the old, but if we write poor quality, from the discussion, this will be revealed, and then eventually the right assessment of that paper will come out. And if a young reviewer, protecting a young reviewer from a senior reviewer, not because necessarily the young reviewer wrote a poor quality review, but wrote a negative review, that's the danger. I think the community has to come up with measures. Maybe for young reviewers, we have to not let their names be revealed or something like this. We have to think about it. But it's worth moving in this direction for all the other benefits that openness gives.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yannis. About reviewers, you talk about the need of an effort from the publisher to having a cost in order to maintain the process and something like that. also reviewers are participating in this effort that are normally not recognized in money or other kind of recognition. So what do you think about this role in the idea, general idea, very interesting idea of open science?
Okay. If you are reviewing, we as researchers review as part of our scientific growth, especially when we're younger, and also as part of our contribution to science. It is like you volunteer to be in a committee and so on, to be president of CLEI and so on, okay? The same way you volunteer to review a paper or to be in a committee of a conference. So this is part of your professional activities. There is no issue of remuneration. If there is a commercial publisher that is making an obscene amount of profit from that, then this is unfair. And then there may be an issue of offering money. But I don't want even that, because then reviewing will become a profession. Will become a professional reviewer, and the quality will suffer, in my opinion. But I absolutely agree with you that reviewing is not recognized as much as it should be. So in your CV, you say, okay, I reviewed for these journals or conferences. Nobody pays attention to that. We have to find ways. And in the open science, you write a paper, you wrote a review, you see, both are subject of other reviewing. So the review is a scientific contribution in some sense. Maybe not the original one, but it is. So I cannot come up with metrics or ways of measuring this, but openness opens the way to identify ways to recognize the effort of reviewing. I think there is one thing.
Okay, but I think...
You are running this?
No, I'm sorry. Yannis would be here until Wednesday night. You can meet him in the conference. You can talk to him. You have to talk to him. You are invited, especially the students. So
absolutely.
We have to go on. I'm sorry.
As we said, interaction. So I'll be here for another 2 days. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Thank you, Yannis.